Hi everyone, I'm David Farmer and welcome to my channel, Effortless Being. So today I'm delighted to be joined by my friend Mike Moss. Mike is a counsellor, a psychotherapist and poet based in Edinburgh, and he's agreed to drop in and chat a little bit about his life and his work. So welcome to the channel, Mike.
Well, thank you, David, and thank you for putting the poet on my list of things I do, because it's only very recently that that part of me has been in the world. Like, I've brought it into the world. I've written poetry for a long time. In fact, I've been wanting to be a poet since I was a teenager.
Yeah.
But this was my poem that I'd love to read later on. That it was just something that came to me, and it's very, very powerful. And so I've read it out before, and I really like it. It's almost like the poem has written me, and I don't really know what that means, but it doesn't feel it's all mine in some way.
Absolutely, absolutely. And these are some sort of a lot of things I'd like to sort of get in
Yes.
the nuts and bolts of. But you absolutely are a poet, Mike. Because I remember when we met a year and a half ago, we were having coffee.
That's right, yeah.
And we were talking about how my sort of forays into non-duality teaching. And I said, well, I don't really feel like I'm a teacher because there's nothing to teach. And I remember you said to me, well, you absolutely bloody are a teacher, David.
Yeah, oh, good. That's good. I'm glad. Yeah.
So I thought maybe before we sort of get into the juicy bits, maybe we could talk a little bit about what led you to becoming a counselor and psychotherapist.
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. I took a sigh there because it's important. Because it's been my work for a long time. I've been working with people for a long time. I discovered that way back at the sort of very early 20s that I enjoyed working with young people. And someone said, you can train to be, there was a youth worker then. And I remember laughing and thinking, to get trained to do this, but it's just playing with kids and just being with them and just being natural and normal. But they said, oh no, there's a course you can study it. So I came to it quite naturally, and then discovered you could get a job in it. So I had my first interview, and I didn't have a lot of experience, but they said, come back in a year, get more experience. And I didn't really, at that time, if I was signing on the dole, which I was, it was as a poet. I just remembered that. I remember going to the job centre, and they said, what's your occupation? I said, I'm a poet. And I'd always written a lot of poetry, but not maybe doing anything with it, apart from writing it and showing friends and giving poems to strangers and things. But I found my way there was a course called Youth and Community Work, so I went on this course in youth work, which I loved, and I still love working with people. And then
you've gone a little bit quiet, Mike. I wonder if your microphone's got switched. It just dropped.
All right, yeah, sorry. Over many years, is that better? Sound better there?
That's better. We're back.
Sorry. Over many years, I worked with people, and then I discovered I really liked working in a one-to-one way. I was doing a lot of group work and youth work, and then I was interested in counselling. But it was definitely a step from what I was doing anyway with people. I thought, I'd like to be better at it, because I'd met so many people that needed support, and although I was helping in some way, I felt I wanted to help more. So I did some further training as a counsellor, and found a way to work in a one-to-one way. That was, but I'm still. It's me. I mean, I've learned some things, but anybody I meet, they get me with all my knowledge and everything. But I'm not. It's not as if I've gained some new skills and ways. Maybe I've just become more accepting of who I am, and I can share that with people.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, because it's one thing I've noticed from my work as a mental health recovery coach is how we need to just approach it from where you are.
Yes.
And from a very sort of natural point of position, and I've noticed that I've come into this now in the stage in my life where I can utilize all life experience and sort of channel it into helping others. But it's really coming from a sort of a very deep and natural place, almost like you said yourself, you came into counseling very naturally.
Yes.
I think you've noticed and recognized that quality of it right from the beginning. And I think anything that you've then studied has sort of been augmented that, but
Yeah,
that core of that sort of natural core doesn't seem to have left at all over the years.
Yeah, and that's the most valuable part of it all.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I remember once when I was working with young people and being watched, but it was part of my early training, so someone would observe, and they said, "Oh, you're a natural," and I said, "What do you mean?" And I was working with some small children, and I would just, when I was talking to them, I would go down to their height, so I'm quite tall. And I would go down, and I hadn't even thought that I'm doing that. It's just a natural thing to go down. If you were to talk to somebody, you go down, head to head, face to face. So this is maybe a 5 or 6 year old or 10-year-old or something. And it was so, yeah. I mean, and I learned from people as well. I think every person I've met with, I take something in that exchange that I want to maybe take on in another way with other people. It informs me in some way.
Yeah, I think that's a great point about going down to their height, because it's so important that we really meet people where they are.
Yes.
And in that case, I love that you're actually physically going down to the height, but the principle is there, where you're actually, because you somehow you felt that you want to meet them where they are.
Yes.
And you're not talking down to them or any way, which leads to this detachment. And that's one thing I really want to ask you about, because I read some of your articles that you sent me a few weeks ago, and they were really great, and they really, really resonated with also the way I approach my recovery coaching. And one thing I want to ask you about is something I read in your article, which is about the two people being in therapy together.
Yes.
I wondered if you could maybe talk a little bit about that.
Well, that's if I strip it right down, it is only two people together in the therapeutic relationship. If it's a one-to-one. Some people do group therapy or family therapy, but my role is single therapy, so I do it with one person. And it starts from that we are only two beings, and I see it broader than just the physicalness of us. We're both on a journey. So if I'm speaking to someone, and a lot of my work has been with young people, but I work with adults as well. But an example with a young person I worked with was that they taught me something that it changed my life. It was a question I had, and I asked them. So already I'm aware of, I can ask people questions that are of value. I'm not just going through the motions.
Yeah.
So, but this young person had been told about he wasn't reaching his potential. And I thought, okay, I wonder if he knows what potential means. Because it's a word that adults maybe use. He doesn't know what it means. He was but 12 years old. And he said, oh yeah, I know what it is, Mike. It means it's stored up energy. So and he got it from science, because I'm not a scientist, so I didn't really understand it from that perspective, but it sounded so new to me. Stored up energy. So the potential of me, the potential of you, the potential of him is already in us. Already in us, and it's stored up. So he was 12, but if he lives to sort of 90 years old, he's got another 80 odd years of life and potential in him stored up. And that's who I meet. That part of it's the wholeness of someone. Because I really believe it, because we're both alive, and until
absolutely. I love that. I really love that. When I read that, it really resonated, because it's really, understanding that, I think maybe a lot of people go into these sort of relationships with this idea of wanting to fix. And of course, if you go in there with this idea that you know better and you know how to fix, what you're doing is that you're actually implying that they're broken.
Exactly. Yes.
Which is, and I can't see that at all, because when I go into relationships with the people I coach, I only see their wholeness. I only sense their wholeness.
Yeah.
And you're going in there from this knowing of your own beingness, and knowing that they are also that same beingness.
I like that, knowing they are also, knowing we are that.
Yes.
We are that.
And the only thing is that they've maybe yet to see that in their own consciousness.
Yeah.
And so when you're going, and even though they perhaps can't articulate, but they can sense that. They can sense that sort of therapeutic presence when you're there, and that's really the sort of meaning of empathy, isn't it? That you're going there,
Yes.
you're not being sympathetic, you're being empathetic. You know, you're
Yes.
actually meeting them exactly where they are
Yes.
and knowing, you know. And so a lot of that, I think, comes back to the therapist, the counselor, also needing to work on themselves and recognizing the need to work on themselves. And I
Yes.
wanted to ask you, because there's such a clear spiritual flavor through the way you talk about therapy
Uh-huh.
and the way you approach it. And I wondered if there's what your feelings of that are. Has there been some spiritual journey for
Yeah.
Moss,
Yeah.
the character?
Yeah. I think it's it's a lovely question. It's a beautiful question. It's there's a knowing this that, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah,
I know
right.
there's a knowing, and I also I feel it. I feel something when I'm there with someone.
Yeah,
Not I, when I was on the bus today, I didn't feel anything. I was just on the bus, man, sitting on the bus going home. I might have been thinking about some other things, but when I can focus and be, there's something that is, I think I'm connected to something bigger, larger. And people have spoken about that in the therapeutic world, particularly Carl Rogers, who wrote a lot, and there's something called person-centered counselling, person-centered theory. And he discovered that through all his work and others that were working with him. He did research, and that combination of two people talking to, one is the helper and the one is the person who wants help. That's the way it sort of sets out. But both are in this whole cosmos, just a bunch of cells, and there's a consciousness interacting. But in the way that it worked, he noticed something, and he believed in science it's called the actualizing tendency. So there's something in the force of growth that's always growing, always going forward.
yeah,
So it's in cells are always multiplying and everything. So there's something in our nature that grows towards more of itself.
yes,
And his assumption was that that was something that going towards something better. So if I say I'm struggling and I'd like to feel happier, for example, so it's about enabling me to go towards that happiness. So it's believing that it's there and it can be achieved. It's just I've forgotten about it, or something's got in the way. I've got lost.
yeah,
So when you talk about a spiritual thing, I think everything is spiritual.
yes.
Everything is. And I know there's religions, and religions have their place, but I don't fit into any religion. I wouldn't. I couldn't just choose one religion,
Mm.
because there's many, and I was brought up in one religion that said that it was the only religion, and it's only people saying that this is it. It's not.
Yeah,
I don't know, but so I find it's a richer experience to have something that is the unknown, and I call it it's a mystery, and some people call it the mystery. I like to call it the mystery. Some people call it source or spirit, or we don't really know. And
I think it's so interesting what you're pointing to, because, I think the individuals that we are supporting in our respective fields, probably up until the time they meet us, they've been labeled by the medical profession, particularly in my field of mental
yes, I
health.
can see
They
that. Yeah,
said,
yeah.
you've been
Yes.
labeled, your name's this, and you grew up here and you went to school there, and now you've got this disease, and this means you've got schizophrenia, or you've got
Yes.
bipolar, you've got this or that. And that becomes this part of their identity.
Yes.
And then they've had so many people coming, these sort of experts coming to them saying, I know this and I know that. And I think what you're really pointed to there is the beauty of feeling that the source, or feeling that unknowable within our own self, and entering the relationship from the position of, you know what, I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know, but let's talk about it.
Yeah.
And let's move forward together.
Yes.
Because every I know is a limitation, isn't it?
Yeah,
Anybody who says I know this and I know that is a limiting thought. And the moment we recognize that we don't know,
Yes.
And we can never know this unfathomable truth and approach not only the therapeutic relationship, but life like that. Then there's that sense of freedom that resonates. And I think that's kind of, if I'm what you're
I
really
think,
pointing to.
yeah, definitely. And this guy, Carl Rogers, he wrote something that it was to help someone move more freely in the world. And
Yeah.
that he's written a lot of stuff, but that really stood out for me, to help someone move more freely. Because when we get caught in our, and people would say our illusion or our mind, there's lots of words for these things. We don't know anything else. We get caught in this
Yeah.
until we can be free of that. And it's meeting someone in the way that I meet them. I can give space for that. We can discover something different.
Yeah.
And even if we don't talk, and it's not something that I would, I don't invite someone to go into silence, but sometimes silence happens naturally. And we can
Yes.
hold that together. I know there's a practice that people might want to invite silence and things, but that's not the way I work. But I know silence is so important because it can give for me, in my own, I don't know if I wouldn't say I meditate. My wife heard this, she would laugh. She'd say, oh, you never meditate. But there is a thing that there's an awareness and a taking stock of just breathing and being. And even in a busy place, a supermarket, just to look around and find that, yeah, people are doing this right now, but there's much more.
Yeah.
But maybe they're not seeing it. And if it was I remember once being in a shop with clothes, and I suddenly felt the cotton of all the clothes, and felt it's all grown from somewhere. It was the cotton grows in a field. I don't know much about it, but everything in the shop, there was life in it, or it had life in it. But we don't think about that all the time.
No. No. That's beautiful. I think that's really what you bring to the working with people, isn't it? To recognize that everything is life, everything is alive, everything is sacred,
Yes.
and to
Yes.
really get them to notice these things beyond the limitations of what they've been led to believe.
Yes.
And that's really comes back to what I was saying about working on yourself, isn't it? And how much of that, when did you really notice that, you need to do that introspection on yourself as well? Was that something that sort of you just intuitively knew early on, or did it come with working with people you realized?
It came. I didn't. There was parts of it that were already known in a way, but I didn't. There was no weight to them. I didn't really know where it was coming from, or just. But it was to find there was a pattern. I think I would say I found a pattern now. And there's also things that go on inside me, that there are times when I close my eyes, I can see this beautiful color.
Mm.
It's this beautiful violet, and not all the time can I see that, but at times I can see it. And I remember searching for what's this thing? This was many years ago. I remember knocking on a Buddhist temple door, and it was at one of the houses in Edinburgh, and say, "I see this color. Can you tell me what it is?" And this guy invited me in and said, "Do you want to come in for a cup of tea? Sit down." I was all excited with this color, and he said, "I can't know what that is. What you've got? There's no. But it's yours."
Yeah.
So wow. So I'm interested in this. I don't know what it is, and I know I'm speaking to you and it's recorded, so other people might watch this and they'll know what it is, or they'll think it's a bit crazy. But there's times to when I really can focus, and with someone as well. There's a color. I don't know if you know what that is. I could ask you. You know what it is.
Well, I mean, it's interesting that we, it's a very subjective thing, obviously. And then when you're working with somebody else, you don't know what they're really feeling, what is going on. But that is the mystery, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of leads me to another quote which I of yours, which I read in the article, which is, "Be open to what may emerge."
Yes.
And I really love that. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about that, because when I read that, it really it is some kind of, it reminded me of a Zen quote, which I love and you mentioned Buddhism there. So there's a very famous Zen master called Dogen Zenji, who was the founder of the Soto sect of Zen Buddhism. And he said, if you want to walk the way of the Buddhas and Zen masters, expect nothing, seek nothing, grasp nothing. And I thought that really resonated with me, that just that beingness of not grasping, not
Yes.
seeking, and not expecting.
Yes.
And I think particularly working in the therapeutic relationship, it's very easy to go in with a certain expectation.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if you, I know I did in the beginning, I was sort of right, I know what I'm going to do here, but
Yeah.
it's really about, I wonder if you also went through that, and then how you sort of recognized that the need to just go in there with no expectation and just be open to what may emerge.
There's a lot in there that I'm immediately thinking of. There was someone that I did some training with. I went to a couple of training events. This woman called Byron Katie.
Oh,
And
yes.
it's something called The Work.
Yes.
And it's incredible because my experience of it was I really understood that if I believe my thoughts, then that I think that's reality. But when I don't believe my thoughts, there's something else.
Yes.
So if my thoughts are about struggle and what I need to do and everything, if I can just have a different relationship with these things, I find something else, and there's this peace. So I liked her work. I did one of the workshops with her down in London, and then I went again another year, and I didn't need to go there again because I thought I don't need to follow her experience of the truth, because there's a whole thing set up around it, which is wonderful. It's so important. People are learning, but I didn't need to then go again. So I realized there's something in me. I don't need a teacher.
Yeah.
But I am my own teacher, I suppose. But I'm willing to accept that. Yeah, there's more. Like books will arrive, or things will fall off shelves, and it's like, oh, look at that. So there's a lot of, if there's anything, there's some guidance somewhere. I believe there's some guidance.
Yeah.
So when I say to wait to see what may emerge, I know that something will.
Yes.
But I trust it.
Yes.
Trust it, because things have always emerged at the right time. There's always the right time. And I've learned that from working with people, worked in a school, and I maybe have worked with a young person who wasn't in that day. And then there'd be a knock on the door, and there'd be another young person saying, have you got a minute? So I used to read, and then they'd come in. So I used to remember, rather than worry about where's the other person gone, there's a space here for whoever will come in, and it'll be the right people at the right time. And when there's no one there, that's right as well, because I can then do something else.
Yeah.
So it was trusting that things will happen. But it's I'm still working this one out, because it's a work in progress. I still don't know what will emerge, even after saying all these things right now. I don't know what will emerge.
Of course. But I love the way you phrase that. So that's so beautiful. And really, of course, what you're alluding to is this effortless being, and this realm of intuition, if
yes,
and which is, much more higher vibrational and than the thinking mind.
yes,
And I think when we recognize ourselves as this effortless being, and allow and trust that, as you say,
yes,
that realm of existence is very much aligned with our true nature.
yes,
And it's only when we sort of step into thinking that things can get askewed and disconnected, if you like, from our true nature. And when we recognize that, is when we, as you say, when people believe their thoughts and are identified with their thoughts, and I'm this, I've got this particular ailment, or this this disease, or whatever it might be, then that limits and then limits your view of the world and your understanding of yourself. Whereas then, if you're able to just notice that, well, they are just thoughts, and just remain in this realm of effortless being, that is in alignment with our true nature.
yes.
And then we start to sense that, and as you said, trust that.
Yes.
And trust the synchronicities and the spontaneity of this effortless flow.
Yes. And when I'm listening to you, I'm thinking also there's a balance for me. There has to be a balance, because to say effortless means I'm not doing anything, or there is something of that, but there's also the fact I am doing something. I'm sitting talking to someone. I've organised it. I've phoned them up or they've phoned come in. We've organised this thing and they come and they sit and we say hello. So there's in the world and more than the world, if you like.
Yeah.
So to have both and to trust that both is there. But because if someone was to come into me and I wasn't to say anything to them, some therapists work that way. And that would create something incredibly very difficult, I would imagine, certainly for some young people. So I've got to be alongside them and know that they get me in that. So I'm doing it. But I like the idea of the effortless, but there's something else. It's the paradox, like to do nothing means to do everything.
That's right.
Everything is being, and I've got this lovely phrase, all is being attended to.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
so
And it's that paradox. I love that you used that word because it's, when we're eventually, when we have to sort of words fail and we have to just accept the paradox of life, don't we? And that there's just simply this infinite being partly coming and going as form and interacting. And sometimes we play the part of that character as the teacher, as the therapist. And then sometimes we just remain as that effortless being in this. And this constant flow and interplay, which is just kind of happens by itself.
Yes.
Really.
Yes. And I like when you've used the word flow, when I've had experiences of when I've felt out of the flow because things haven't been good. But then I realize it's me. The flow is still flowing. The flow is always flowing. It's my experience of whatever's going on that takes me out of it.
Yeah.
To remember it, I go straight back into the flow.
That's right.
It's that remembering.
That's right. There's a wonderful phrase which is, everybody is floating along in the great river. Some choose to swim against the current. They too are pulled along.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. So this is great because that's an example, David, of something that is really grounded, and I can understand that, and anyone can understand that because we know about a river, we know. So it's the sacred teaching that you might never need to. It's all about experience and consciousness, and then there's the telling the story of it.
Yeah,
and I think I fall into the telling the story of it with someone because we tell the story together about their life, how they understand it. But there's still also the whole consciousness that's around it that we can all tap into, and I don't need to find out what that is because I know I can't find it out because it's like the seeking it. But you don't need to seek it; it's there.
Yes. I think it's so clear in the way that you talk about your work that you've really that balance is there, that interplay of the yin and the yang.
It's like there's two magnets. If I get two magnets and I turn one round so they don't actually touch each other, there's the force that pulls it. And they're both opposites, but they can also come together.
Yes.
That's where we meet when opposites come together. And when I do that with my hands, I know I'm interested in symbols. That's a symbol of prayer. There's the two sides, and there's the one hand clapping and all the stuff from other teachings, but that's it. Two things come together, but they're the opposites. And we live in that opposite pretty much all the time until it's and we get that. And in my experience of working as a counsellor, I'm learning that moment when someone gets something. There's a man called Eugene Gendlin that worked with Carl Rogers, and he's now you can see him on YouTube. He died some years ago, but he's a great master of things. However, he wouldn't call himself that, but he talks about the aha moment, or the moment when someone really feels something that's beyond words in therapy. So someone might say something, and I'll say, "Was it a bit like this?" And I'll say, "No, not like that. Was it heavier? No, not heavy. Oh, it's strong. Yeah, strong." And they get the feeling, so the body knows. So we're always seeking something. We're always going forward to seek. So he's a great teacher, and I just love his work. That it brings a lot of I don't know. It brings a lot of the opposites together. Just because we feel it in our bodies. Like, that's it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And that's I think it's really the meaning of altruism, isn't it? This true meaning of altruism, that these things are really just happening by themselves. Where it's just, we enter into it with this not knowing this, with this openness, and in that the magic can happen by
Yes,
itself.
the magic, yes.
Yeah.
It just feels like magic or alchemy. There's a chemical thing, because we are a bunch of chemicals and cells
Yes.
we seem to be separate, but two human beings, but we're part of this whole universe that is the same. It's all the same stuff.
That's right.
But we think we're separate in ways, and we are separate. That's the paradox, but we're also connected.
Yeah.
And when we can find that connection, we'll find that meaning, that it's we find the language for things that we're experiencing that gives us some understanding. And if we're struggling, and then we hear something that connects us to this larger thing, it could be hope or just, I don't know, that someone is listening, that someone is wanting to hear someone else, and that can just be enough, because someone that maybe has never experienced that.
Yes.
Be really heard.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So this kind of brings me on to about, now that we've talked about the magic of therapy.
Yes.
This brings me on to your poetry, because this seems to be something that is really personal to you. And as you said, you've been doing this for quite a while. But recently, in particular, one poem in particular has really brought it to the fore, I think, within you. Can you talk a little bit about your poetry and how it's important it is in your life and in your work as a therapist?
Yeah. I really like words, and words will in conversation, I can hear things, like people will say something, and I remember it, or it sounds like it could be bigger. And an example would be, I can't think of it, but if someone talks about responsibility, it's my responsibility for something. And if I break that up, it's my response and ability. It's my ability to respond. And that feels different. So I supervise some people who feel I've got to be responsible for something. And they hold this, they carry this other thing. But when we say, no, it's your ability to respond. How able are you to respond in that situation? And people can find more meaning in it. So I like words. So when I hear the word, there's something in this poem that to hear the heart of the earth. And if you write that out, you've got hear, and then heart, it's got here with T at the end. And then earth is you just take the H from the beginning of heart and put it to the end of earth. And I see that so clearly, to hear the heart of the earth. So I like to put words in my poetry that have more, or there's an aliveness in them.
Yeah.
So
comes into the symbolism you were talking about.
Yes. Yes. And then I found that everything that I'm writing, I'm tuning into a part of me that wants to express something. A poem is it's not just like a letter to someone, it's a much more of a feeling or a symbol. And I think the more I've been experiencing that in my writing and working with people, when I went back to poetry, it's got all that stuff in it. I used to write lots of notebooks and things, but it was just, I don't know, it sounds a bit strange, but it feels like I was rehearsing for the poetry, just getting everything written and written and written. And I'm not necessarily going back to the old stuff I've written, because that's already in me. But to write something from now, and it opened up. And even the word now, people talk about how now is, if I turned the word now backwards, it's one. And I used to say, we've won the now. Let's celebrate now. We have won.
Yeah.
And then, it's great. I love all that stuff. And there's lots of words.
It's wonderful. Again, I can see that interplay between sort of the absolute and the relative, if you like, within you, even within poetry.
Yeah.
So specifically this poem that you're going to read today, I think there's a little story behind it, but I'm really grateful that you agreed to read it out, because it's, when I first heard it, again, because I work as a recovery coach, I could really resonate with a lot of the things that you were alluding to in it. And it really encapsulates this yin-yang balance of everything I think that we've discussed in this conversation. Would you mind just explaining a little bit about the background of this specific poem?
Yes. Well, everything we've talked about, there is always doubt. I think doubt is part of it. I can never be 100% assured of anything. Until I look at nature. And nature doesn't doubt itself. Nature is just always nature. A tree doesn't think, I'm going to be a tree today. This is tree. And the blade of grass doesn't say I'm insignificant, because every single blade of grass is part of a carpet, is a lawn. So it's all connected. So nature doesn't worry about these things, but I do, because I'm human. And I think, oh, well, is this working? What am I doing here? Does there all this stuff? But I like that that's around for me, because I bring that mix in with that doubt and with knowing. It's the opposites again. That has to be both. I can't be so assured that I know everything, because I would explode. There would be, no one could know everything. So I use that in the poem, the two things. And it's about my question, like it's, I'm wondering about meeting someone. So in this magical thing we're talking about, it might sound amazing, but I don't know what the hell I'm going to do when I meet the next person. I really can't know that. So I'm wondering, and maybe it's can I still have faith that something will work here? Can I really know? So I'm speaking not to the person in front of me, I'm speaking to me. Can I be ready to meet you? Because I want to honor that, what I see in you and what I want to see in you. I want to honor it, but am I good enough for it? Am I stable enough? And who am I? And so there's a question about that in the poem. And then I also want to go back to the very beginning, how we came out of the sea, because I believe that in science, that we would have been cells in the sea, and we came out of the sea and we became on the rocks, and we became form, and we became people eventually. But so I love that journey, the idea of that journey, because that's still in us all, in our DNA, I believe. But I can't really know that. Someone's told me that, and I believe it, because I think it sounds true. And I like the idea of it, that we are all these bits and pieces that we've just become form. So in the poem, I've talked a little bit about that as well, about the form of it, that we are all this together. And the story was someone had, again, another podcast, someone had asked me to read it on the podcast. Someone, Ricky Western, who does these podcasts, and he's invited people to read the poems that I've written that really have meaning for them, that resonate with them. So that was me reading it out for the first time, really. No, I'd read it in public. Yes, I'd read it in public. There was a poetry sort of night, and I've never read anything in public before, really, in poetry. So I went with my wife, and I was reading. I was all very, very nervous to read this poem. And if people were getting up reading the poem, then I got up. And it was great. I loved just putting it into the world, this poem. Yeah. And it really felt like it went to it. And I got so much great applause. And even my wife was happy with it. She said, "Oh, you've done so well." All this. So it's gone into the world, and it's still in the world. And then I meet you a year and a half ago, and then you see the poem online. And then here I am talking about it again. So the poem's bringing us together in some way. Well, me and you together. Yeah. Definitely. But I like that it's out there in the world. And it's, yeah. I don't know if that's the story you were hoping for.
That was the one that I was hoping for. Yeah, okay. And I think I love that when you put it out into the world, because I really think it resonates on such a level, as does your work as a therapist, that you really, get to something really deep within all of us. So
yes,
yeah. So if it's okay with you,
definitely,
I'd love you to read it.
Okay. Right. All is being attended to. It starts by me wondering how I will be before I meet you. Will this driving force that connects us to the universal flow come back again? Can I find a way of being this time to help manage what the healing requires in us? This special energy we call on from our pain. Do I really believe today all is being attended to? Am I connecting to what is happening in me and what may be happening in you and what is happening in the world at this time? Are we in celebration of what may be more than us? Are we connected in some cosmic dance as we enter the possibilities of being in right relations with ourselves, the other, and the earth? So I just breathe. I give myself permission to make mistakes and trust that if I try and offer my best, I will be offering everything at this moment. To truly know someone, I have to get out of the way, and then I approach something powerful, an experience of being me that is not just me, but is also other. It is a force that holds our potential in its moment by moment unraveling, putting aside the barriers in its way by gently lifting them, loving them, placing them to the side so our path is open to becoming, to meeting me in you, you in me, and in our being in the earth. There is no other part of us separate from the earth. I approach you with open heart on this journey. The story of coming out of the sea and walking on the rocks of the world to smooth the absolute, to prepare the flow in us to become the divine flow, the depth of the ocean, the tips of the stars, exalted by love and the rising of the song, all is being attended to, all is being attended to, all is being attended to. To hear the song is to hear the heart of the earth.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Mike. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I feel quite emotional now. I was wondering if the emotion would come in, but it's coming right now. I'm glad it didn't come in the words to waver in the words, but it's here right now. I'm feeling, yeah.
No, thank you. It's a beautiful way to end our chat today, and
Yes.
thank you very much for taking the time to join and talk about your work.
Thank you, David. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.